Good morning. It is Friday, the 18th of June. Yesterday morning, I was sitting out under my apricot tree, and there was a gigantic explosion across the street. One of two things happened, although at the time I was worried it was a gunshot. Either the swamp cooler on top of a neighbor's house exploded, or the electrical wiring into the pole exploded. But whatever it was a blast of light with the force of an explosion that the force of it hit my head. And I've had a concussion before, so I was aware that there was an element of being concussed. Not severe, just I thought it would pass. But I woke up this morning, and it did pass actually for the day. But this morning, thinking it had passed, I was roughhousing with Kevin, my daughter's dog, who we're watching while she camps. And I was up and down, leaning up and down a lot. And so now I'm really feeling the effect of the blast yesterday. So if you'll just forgive me, there is a conversation I want to have today, but my normal animated the animation I usually experience when I'm talking isn't as vibrant today for me, because frankly my frontal lobe and my brain feel a little fuzzy from the events of yesterday. I did a recording last night. We have a group of people that are reading the chapters of a book I'm writing called You as the Mind of Creation. And it's turned out that these 2-hour sessions of what looks like people reading a book are turning into something incredibly life-changing, really fascinating to me, to see what happens when you're living in resonant language. And what do I mean by that? It's so hard. It's such a gap of perception because human beings don't realize that the common languaging, the common way we talk to one another, the common way we engage doesn't really deal in resonance or connection often. I wouldn't say all the time though. So there's this phenomenon that happens when, like in this book that's being written, You as the Mind of Creation, first time I've ever attempted to put into the written word the same resonance I feel when I'm in a consult or a activation or when I'm leading an event. Because for me, there's this meta point, this shared field between myself, the power of creation, and the person or people that are interactive, interrelated, and symbiotic with me. So for me, we're like today even, we're in a living field together. And I don't know, given the way humans perceive, everything is like stick figures or objects, independent of each other in a room, not realizing that the air is connecting everyone together, and that it might be more valuable to pay attention to the air than the stick figures in the room, because the air is the one thing everybody has in common. So we could say that we're all in the field of creation, and it's the one thing we all have in common, and that we're glued together through that field of creation, and that when our systems are restored to that exchange, a little bit like when the blood can flow in the body again, or the system can breathe air again, there's this resonance that happens, this vibrational, like if you ever been underwater in a swimming pool and you say something to somebody, you can feel this, not only the movement of the water towards the other person, touching the other person with the sound wave of your voice, but also it has a certain vibration in the water that it doesn't have on the land. So it's interesting to be in that topic, given my head is now this morning back in the impact of the blast yesterday. But it's like that. It's if our skin and if our body could feel like it was part of the waves of an ocean, that our solidness isn't so solid after all, in the same way we feel floating on an ocean or the waves of the ocean, moving our bodies back and forth. There is a communication, an empathic exchange that occurs between human beings that I call resonant language. We could also call it resonant listening, when we're not listening objective, with a level of objectification. We're not listening, I guess, we're not listening topic oriented. We're listening, or belief oriented, or agreement oriented. We're listening in the connection between ourself and another. And it produces this vibrational wave, produces this vibrational frequency that's resonance with creation, because we are creation. We're all creation. We're all part of creation. And creation's all part of us. And there's something about resonant listening and resonant languaging that comes from that shared field of being restored to the sentient intelligence and empathic exchange between ourselves, others, and creation. My mentor in my 20s, his name was Brian Christopher. He still does consults at the Light Institute, but you can get him online. He used to say to me that, that's what this effect of that blast in my head had me lose has me losing my train of thought a bit. I can't remember what I was going to say. It's in regard to, I'll say something else that sourced from him, but wasn't his exact quote. But a long, long time ago in my 20s, I shifted from listening to human beings, unless they're busy being human, which I'll try to explain in a minute. It was as if everybody that spoke to me and I spoke to, I was listening to creation speak. And I was listening to different kinds of reality speak. And so I always had trouble with psychology and assigning properties to people, like, they're pathetic or they're awesome. That always kind of threw me, because I didn't really attach to people. Oh, I know what he said. I didn't really attach to people the way other people do. I was more listening, probably the mind of creation from birth. But what Brian said to me in my early 20s was, he said that that the world may never, the human world, may never, in his lifetime or mine, may never return to their relational languaging that has them feel part of everything. And that one of the things I began to observe is taking that into account and having it no longer worry me was what I began to notice is there was a way when you were listening another as creation, not listening another as properties or qualifying them in any way or categorizing them in any way. There was a way you actually could hear creation in their words and in their speaking. You could hear its dilemmas. You could hear its awareness. You could hear, thanks, Preline. You could hear beyond the atypical listening of there's a person over there that I have to see if I agree with them or see if I want to hear what they have to say or see if I even like them, this kind of separated kind of engagement rather than we're all water drops in a gigantic ocean and every now and then they slide into each other and being in the awe and wonder of the other's occurrence. So yesterday, an extraordinary day, and it gave me the opportunity, and it started funky. It started with this head thing from the explosion across the street, and but it turned into a day that I could have a conversation with the group last night about really being able to presence for them what I mean when I use the phrase a reality of unity. And so I'm going to post that. I'm going to post that on Sacred Site. And I'm just in the process of I just uploaded it to Dropbox and didn't get any further. I don't want to turn it into a YouTube. But I began to notice between last night and this morning that there's been a shift in the characteristic of reality. And when you're a seer and a mystic, you pick up on that like a captain on a ship begins to pick up on shifts in the water and shifts in the wind. And I was thinking this morning when I got up for my before me thinking my head was okay and I did too much moving it around too much. I was really thinking this morning, I always know in a kind of an immediate hindsight when something is shifted because I notice that I'm taking more time to try to get something present. I'm taking more time to articulate something that I don't realize that I am present to its occurrence. It seems like all of us is just something I seem to want to say. But last night, and I really took a lot of time trying to language in such a manner, bring words together in such a manner that people could gain registers for what I'm going to term in this conversation a shift of reality, a shift of capacity actually in a human being, a restorative capacity actually, a restoring capacity. And there's always the attention that I'm paying to the mental perceptive mind, because if you think about how the mental perceptive mind works, it's always boxing everything in, like you have a laundry list of perceptions. So it's very hard that you can bring words to. So it's very hard when the system, systemically, you begin to perceive out beyond your laundry list of boxed in interpretations or explanations or definitions. But it is where we are. And if only a small group of people, because I'm not working very hard to get work anymore. Well, I never worked very hard to get work, to get actually, but I did have an interest in staying present to people. But as this mist of creation is once again able to not only register to at the systemic level of a human being, not necessarily the perceptive level, it's compelling to me to live in that mist, like the air that not only touches all of us, but it's what breathes us and what we breathe. And there's really no separation at all. There's just layers of density that the air moves through. Do you understand that? That right now in your body, the air is all the way through your body and all the way back out. Your body's part of the molecular kind of geome of that air is that's held in air. But we're also held in spirit. And I think this morning you might feel it as I say it. Like physically, you can feel it. That this thing that we think is independent of air, independent of spirit, is actually just a denser form of it. Just a density of particles that can't survive without air, can't survive without being composed of air as part of its biochemical nature. And it can't exist without spirit. Having spirit is part of the composition of its alchemical nature. And you can hear as I'm speaking, it's a little hard to wrap your head around because your perception has you be a stick figure, an object floating around, independent of the universe around you, not part of it. And I'm just saying that's changing. That's changed. That's what I'm saying. So what would be important then? What would be important? I think what would be important is to give our perceptive mind a break and to not be so obsessed with trying to figure out what's happening when we don't have language for what's happening. We don't have a concept or a understanding or a definition or just barely, like in this conversation, barely able to even distinguish it because it's been so long since we as perceptive creatures have been able to perceive or register a unified field, being back in the absorbed back into the consciousness of creation, because at a systemic level, our system has become capable of that again. So it really messes with the part of the human mind that thinks that you exist between your ears and your head and not in your body. In the chapter we read yesterday morning, we talked about Aramaic and how hard it was to conceive in our present language base that in the Aramaic language, the word body and the word spirit or soul, they were all interchangeable. They had not been separated by language. They weren't even, it wasn't even conceptually possible to consider them separate. So how we conceptualize things and how we perceive things affects how we register reality and how we register our existence or existence itself. So when I began to go after the mind of a human being, I knew that I wasn't going to try to change your mind. I knew that I wasn't going to try to give you a new set of beliefs. I needed to see how I could get at it systemically. And the creation templates came to me, because that gets at it systemically. The other thing that gets at your system's ability to come back online as part of a unified field and register itself there. You know, it's really important to try to comprehend what I'm saying. Brian said to me once, that was the other thing I was going to share earlier, that there'd be a time when I would not be able to language things so others could hear what I said in their domain of existence. That there would come a time when I was 75, that was this past month, where I would be absorbed back into the mind of creation and how life is perceived there, how reality is perceived there in a unified state, in a unified field. And that I would kind of lose this bridging ability to bridge the gap between a condition where humanity is separated from itself, from its design, from its connection with other human beings, and from its connection with all life, and its connection with systemically, perceptively unaware of being connected with all creation. So a unified field, a shared field of humanity that is at work about becoming consciously conscious, ups the ante for the ability of the systems to come back online, even if the humans in those systems aren't yet perceiving it. Because we're a symbiotic species, we belong to each other. We're all part of one coherent, cohesive, congruent whole that has lost touch with that, have become unconscious to that. So I'm really in this magical moment. And it's an interesting magical moment because, like all of us, I want to survive financially, mostly. I know how to pretty much draw to me what I need to survive otherwise. And so ever since the beginning of the year, when I realized that I kind of crossed over, I thought about what Brian said about without those bridges that become attractors for people whose conceptual and perceptual mind, not them, by the way, not themselves, not you. It's not you. But unfortunately, the way the mind perceives can be costly because it dulls down certain registers and certain attractors that would make you make choices that I'm going to leap here because I'm going to leap and come back, okay? One of the reasons those registers are dulled and kind of dormant is because they're associated with the pain of separation, the pain of the system itself being torn away from, being torn out of each other's arms, being torn out of our direct relationship with creatures and skies and air, and something happened that tore us out of the system of being able to register ourselves as part of existence itself. So it really is a serious leap of faith. I was on the phone with my daughter almost an hour last night. We were discussing her empathic nature, because like me, she never separates from anyone. She can't. But the fact that we swim in a sea of separation makes this pain of that separation is growing more active, because at a systemic level, as our nature of being comes back online, the memory of connection comes back online with it, and the pain of the memory of being separated grows more intense. But that always happens in healing. Any type of healing, whether it's psychological, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual, physical, that there's this transitional time where you're in the both and of the pain of the memory at a physical, emotional, sentient, empathic, did I say mental level. That's the crossover we're in right now. We're crossing over this memory, this remembrance of loss, this remembrance of separation. This, but it isn't remembrance like recall. It's in our bodies. It's the cellular memory releasing what has been suppressed to make room for new experience, to make room for new dynamics of connection. So after I have a meeting after this call, but by noon Mountain Time. By noon Mountain Time, I will have posted this talk I did at the beginning of last night's Realities of Unity meeting. And if you can come back and listen to it, I would recommend it. The thing you can count on me is I do work systemically. I do work with your system. My cellular empathic nature, because it has no sense of separation, is always engaged in a conscious relationship with bringing everything back into wholeness, to bring the system back into operating on behalf of all life. And it's, I haven't ever been willing to say that, because we live in this strange, bizarre reality that is always concerned about intimacy, like fear of intimacy, fear of connection. And yet, when people are in agony emotionally, or when people are physically heavily, frighteningly compromised, they come to me and say, like systemically, they can register, come into my body, Tantra, take my body into your body, take my heart into your heart, take my mind into your mind. Because in that shared field of connection, that intimacy of connection, because we're not meant to be apart, that which has been devastating us, that which has been tearing us apart, can't exist. But this fear of intimacy, this fear of connection, this boogeyman, terror, probably because there was a boogeyman way back there that did tear us apart. Probably not an entity, more like a condition. But it sets up quite a fear factor in a species conversation. So I was saying to my daughter last night, are we going to do this, honey? What do you think? You want to dedicate the next 6 years? That's a long time. So do you want to dedicate I'm going to cry. My daughter's my hero. So's my other kids, but she's really my hero. My heroine. I hate to say heroine because they're always tragic. Hero. She's my Wonder Woman. And she's so empathically connected like I am. And I know what she goes through. I know how human beings think when they can't get another person off their mind, that something's wrong with them. Not that they're not supposed to get that person off their mind, because you're just not disconnected, that's all. And all these things we do to, actually we were laughing in between crying. We were laughing because she was saying, I have this mindset, Mom, that just says, I just need to separate from them. And I said, well, have you realized that's clinically insane? And she laughed and said, yes, because I can't. Because I can't. And so what she's been doing is what I did, which is so fascinating to me, is developing a relational field where you can shift the context of your perception and retrain your emotional reactions, frankly, to be on for, in this case, she broke up with someone, to be like life partners, but they still have this incredible intimacy. And she and they, which is fantastic, they're working on keeping that intimacy alive. Like their project is keeping that intimacy between them alive, while each of them, there's a large age difference, while each of them goes about their own physical life independently, including sexually. And it's hard. It goes against the grain of society where we have to possess another and they have to possess us. And she consciously is feeling possession. She's consciously feeling the systemic paranoia of possession as a broken system. She knows it's a broken system. And it's either going to break her or she's going to break the trauma response. She calls it the trauma reaction of her emotional, conceptual, organic system that has had to possess to survive in the past. And yet she knows that's not real. Even though her body experiences it as real, her emotions experience it as real, and her thoughts experience it as real. And so we were kind of having a strategic conversation in the midst of, it's one thing to handle something in your head, to come to a decision. Y'all ever done that? You've come to a decision, but your heart doesn't line up with that. Your emotions don't line up with that. Your soul doesn't line up with that. Your feelings, your connection, none of it lines up with that decision. So why I'm saying this is my daughter was really aware she's at a systemic transmutational, she's in a systemic transmutational moment, and that she's having to bring her human will to it. Her will to not disconnect from this person, because they clearly have an empathic, unity-based relationship. But the nature of it doesn't, like I have had a couple of those, the nature of it doesn't live in them being together every minute of every day, completely absorbed with each other. It actually goes the other way. Because it's healthy, because it's real, it makes them expand out to want to include more in whatever avenues of self-expression they feel called to. Wow, game changer, wouldn't it be, if we could restore that systemically in ourselves. if we could be even part of another person's agony, if we had the capacity to feel the broken matrix, the broken systemic aspect of ourselves, and we had the strength, stamina, capacity to be with that agony. You know, Kahil Gibran says, without being able to give a place for sorrow, you can never be able to give place for joy. That's the power of duality. If we could systemically take care of our bodies in agony, that's what I had to do when Lily died. I was so clear that I couldn't let my body's agony, my loss of her physical touch, I couldn't let that agony separate me from her. I couldn't risk shutting down my empathic connection to her that survives past the physical world. And even now, when it comes up, it's when we talk about our agony has lessened, we think we're recovering from pain or recovering from a negative condition. No, we're not. The capacity for agony is reducing in us. The capacity for pain is lessening because the system, your system, is more able to exist in connection. But so far, my daughter and I were talking about last night, we haven't discovered a way to, I think there might be a way, I think homeopathically there might be ways to lessen the trauma impact, to lessen the trauma impact of separation, to lessen that trauma impact. But that's where we are. That's where, whether, you know, there's a song by Buffy St. Marie. It goes, let me see if I can remember it. I have two songs in my head at the same time. I don't think I can stereo sing both of them at the same time. And I think as far as cadence and key, they would probably be very dissonant if I tried to sing them together. Plus the fact it's probably impossible. So let me mess a minute. It's here I'll stay until it's time for you to go. Don't ask why of me. Don't ask how of me. Don't ask forever of me. Love me now. I was an oak, now I'm a willow. Now I can bend. And if I never in my life see you again, here I'll stay until it's time for me to go. Don't ask why of me. Don't ask how of me. Don't ask forever of me. Love me, love me, love me, love me now. What if? Why not? I'm just saying, it's where we are. Each of us is experiencing it in our own circumstantial drift. Each of us is experiencing the restoration of empathy as our glue with creation, each other in life. And each of us are in the trauma memory of it. And either we can stay there, committedly transmuting that agony into life force energy and back into connection. There's another, I should make a playlist. Somebody torture me until I make a playlist, would you? Because I have my to-do list is a little highly compromised lately. But there's another song by Carly Simon. And it has to do with what my daughter's at work on, and what I think a lot of us are at work on unconsciously. And a section of that song goes, hold on, I have to shift keys in my head. For those of you that don't know, I had cancer, a cancerous tumor on half my thyroid, so they took it out in 1997, but they clipped my vocal cords. And then I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, because they told me it'd never heal, so I couldn't sing. I've been a singer all my life, and when I tried to modulate, it would hit that cut vocal cord, and I couldn't modulate. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I healed. My vocal cords healed. They're still not strong, hence I can't belt like I used to. But it's good to feel like my ability to modulate. But I also started shifting my hearing, my modulation of being able to hear notes and hear the key, shifted a minor third, which was brutal for those of you that are singers. So now I have trouble when I go to listen to the key that a song's in. If I've just sung another song, I have trouble. Just like we talk about consciousness, my consciousness got adapted to E flat, and I'm sorry, a minor third, and I have to pull myself out of the complete way I figured out how to get back in the door to the song to get into another song. But I do want to try to sing the piece of this next song too. This is by Carly Simon, and I also talk long enough to get the register out of my head to register newly. But it goes, don't wake me unless you love me. It hurts too bad to go back to sleep. Don't wake me unless you're a friend of mine. I'd rather stay in my dreams. And that's what my daughter and her Anukara, her friend, her beloved friend, that's what they're at work on. They're trying to wake each other up. And they're staying beside each other as they go through the pain of separation that is obsession, into the authenticity of connection where love is free to play in multiple forms of its nature. And the other one is Cher in the movie about burlesque. Burlesque, it's from Burlesque. And I'm not singing it. I can't get my head around it into being able to translate it into singing it to you, which I would actually love to be honest. Any way we can find to remodulate our relationship with pain, to not fear it so much, to know it's a healing, because you are filled with pain. Your whole systemic nature has been traumatized. Your pain waiting for a place to happen. Sorry, but that's what happens when we've been in a trauma-based reality for thousands of years. So we need our Wonder Women and our Wonder Men. We need and that's what my daughter's getting to experience. You know, two of them knowing they don't belong together as life partners, but they belong together as beloveds. I'm going to go more into this Sunday in the realms of the beloved. I apologize. One date says June 20th and the other one says June 29th, and it's June 20th. Especially in the power of the solstice and the power of the full moon. We can use that deep dreaming. We can use the way the moon makes us feel odd and makes us more tender and more schismy. We can use that power if we would like to do that, to go deeper into our soul's resonance, tap our soul, so that our soul consciousness can rise. Our soul consciousness, in the definition of the work of Tantra Mat, is our shared spirit. where all our spirits come together as one soul. Our spirits for me are individuated. It's what enlivens the flesh and allows us to survive the deep woundedness that has happened to humanity here. And I'll post the 3 songs. I have a meeting right after this call, so Praline, if you're on, if you would WhatsApp me what I said here. I'm going to post the 3 songs. YouTube's the 3 songs. I'm going to post the YouTube of my first part of the call last night, and I think that was it. Maybe we'll post a link to Sunday. That might be nice. So the mood today would be coming together in this call, and if we ever can figure out the technical aspect of Create a World, which we're at work about, which is about blending Zoom with YouTube. Somehow I've managed to learn to work Facebook, and I can even blend Facebook with, thank you, Mara, and the living playlist. That's what the other thing I said I do. That might take a little longer, but I just think music has this ability, music has this ability to let our system absorb something and give it back a place. You know, it gives us, that's why I had, as an aside, I had a woman from the bank call me and leave a message on my voicemail. And my voicemail is a song. It's the song that goes, how could anyone ever tell you? How could anyone ever tell us? Although I said you. How could anyone, you're welcome to sing along. How could anyone ever tell us we are anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell us we are less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that our living is a miracle? How deeply we're connected to our soul. Well, I got a long voicemail from the lady at the bank telling me how hard her day had been and how she had to turn down 3 applications for loans and that her heart was breaking. And when she called to leave a message for me to discuss a shift I want to do in one of my accounts, she got the song. And in the song, she could cry. She said, I've been sitting here at my desk crying. Thank you. So could you lower your threshold of fearing pain for a week? Your fear of it, it hurts. I'm clear it hurts. But try getting a cactus. Oh, Sabina has, you guys see, you get me in trouble. Okay, we'll do it. Liz, make a note. Cooking and singing together. Zoom. Liz, I'm assigning that to Liz. Okay? We will do that. Sabina is another Wonder Woman. Sabina, put your website or your Facebook or whatever up there. Sabina, Ina, I don't know, we don't have words, do we? Summer food music, that's the deal. It's going to be really wild. And singing. We're going to try to do this because it's good to really be gangly in some of the things. But back to Sabina. Sabina sent me a chapter of her book, and believe me, don't get screwed up and that makes somebody special. No, it's just rose in the field. We're all rising in the field. But what's really beautiful about it is that she's has the strength, stamina, capacity. She's clearly developing it with her writing and with what she's organizing. She's clearly she's clearly moving into, that's my diet, Myra, is Mediterranean food. so I'm on. But the point is that she's an example of someone who's taken on the vulnerability of intimacy, the vulnerability of trauma and pain, and she's laid herself open for that to be an address for her where others can find her. That's what we are. We're addresses for each other. And you know that there is that song, "We haven't got time for the pain." We have all these, you should see all these messages coming through on here. You guys, you have to go put all these messages on Facebook Live, Space of Safe and Sacred. That's where this is going to be contributed, not in our WhatsApp feed. So get your little butts in gear and go to the other address on Facebook Live. I'm sorry, on a Sacred Space for Rest and Courage group, and post all this. Take a few minutes after this call and feed the field. You know, if we're going to do this, you know, the other one, "I haven't got time for the pain." We think that means we haven't got time for the pain, so we have to suppress it. No, we don't have the time for the pain to keep us from intimacy anymore. We don't have time for the pain. Yay, Beryl. We don't have time for the pain to disrupt our search for intimacy, to reconnection, to be back in relationship with each other. So most of my story I did at the beginning about yesterday is at the beginning of the talk I did last night, so I'm going to post it. And I want you not to be afraid. Next week, if you want to come back here and you're vulnerable and you notice that during the week you got more vulnerable and more sensitive, I'm just begging you not to be afraid of it. We've got to walk this. We've got to walk this through to the other side. You know, out in the Rio Grande, it's been deeply reduced because of a dam they put in. But it's still a mighty river, and it's about, I don't know, maybe half a football field across. And when you step into the water, it's shallow. You can walk across, but you can still go down into the sand bottom, and you can still get caught by currents and kind of wash downstream. Pretty hard to drown in the Rio, but you can end up not where you started, for sure. And you got to work to drown in it, but you can get displaced. You can get frightened. You can get worried you can't get out of something as you try to walk across it. And it's actually pretty hard to get up on the bank on the other side. And that's our emotional field right now. That's what we're working through. We're not alone. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. And if we come together as a collective and we put ourselves to work about it, our faith can move mountains. Our collective soul carries the power of the gods and goddesses. And I would love for us to know ourselves that way. I would love for us to know who we are together. I have a message about someone telling me they're on their way. I am not expecting anybody this morning, so I need to get off of Facebook Live and get on a conference call and answer the door, which is pretty much how yesterday happened too. Love you. Please take time on the group after this call to post things, post connection, post, build a field. Love you.